Hi everybody, welcome to Heel Heat. This is our TNA show for the week, and my name is George Coles. Let's get right into it. First we have Mannix getting beat up in the back, coming to the ring. Basically setting out an open challenge to any member of Ego. We have Kaz, Frankie Kazarian, coming out, seemingly to accept the challenge, only to be followed by Daniels and then Rude. The odds are stacked 3 against 1. Which brings out Samoa Joe and Sting, thus setting up a 6-man tag match later on in the night. Nice, decent opener. I'm glad to see they didn't start with the Aces and Eights, which is something they've been doing a lot lately. But good way to set up a feud, or the main match for the night with the opener. Now coming off of that, we had Mannix in the back talking to Chris Sabin. Chris Sabin was really a little bit condescending to him about his accomplishments and what he's done. Basically taking credit for Mannix in some weird way. Which set up the match Mannix versus Jeff Hardy, which Mannix asked for last week, if you guys remember, with Chris Sabin and Velvet Sky as conscious observers on the outside. A little bit weird. They didn't go with the normal, guest commentator route that they just had him sitting, and they had him sitting off in an area where it was kind of hard to see him. Kind of almost forgot about him. Jeff Hardy picks up a win in a very decent match. Afterwards, he raises Mannix's hand. Sabin comes in, does the same thing, only to turn on him and attack him. So we see a Chris Sabin heel turn. I'm a little bit intrigued with this. I thought his world title run fell really flat. I would be excited to see what he could do with this. I think Chris Sabin's a great wrestler. Kind of think his time with the Motor City Machine Guns was his best part of his career. Maybe if he could go into a little bit of the machine gun version of himself, a little bit more cocky, it might work out really well. Either way you look at it, I'm excited about it, and this is going to be a good X Division feud. Next up, we have the Women's or Knockouts Division title match. ODB challenging Mickie James. Surprise, surprise, ODB wins. I don't think anyone, even if you didn't read the spoilers for this taped show, I don't think anyone thought that Mickie was leaving with the title, especially since 2-3 days before the match happened, it's announced that Mickie James and TNA parted ways, so kind of anticlimactic for most fans that read the dirt sheets, at least, and I'm assuming that most of you do if you watch this show, because you get all the wrestling info you want. But still a very good match. A friend of mine, Triple F, mentioned this with Mickie James leaving, it's kind of the death of the Knockouts division. I mean, really, there's going to be 2-3 knockouts. I mean, right now you have ODB, Gail Kim, and Velvet Sky, and that's it. For Taryn Terrell is off, reportedly pregnant. I don't know if that's been confirmed or not. And the other knockouts have gone and parted ways, so I don't know if you could really call it a division when you only have 3 wrestlers. After the match, ODB celebrates with her husband Eric Young and Joseph Park, which brings out the bromans, Robbie E and Jesse Goddard's. They kind of run him down. You see Robbie E challenges Park. Park says, "I'm not dressed, I'm in a suit." So EY says, "Well, I'm ready to go." And you get a match, EY versus Robbie E. Quick roll up within about 10 seconds. Robbie E says, no, bro. It wasn't you that I was challenging him. Joseph Park, same thing, quick roll up, right about 10 seconds. I really think they could do more with Robbie E. I think he's an interesting character that, if played or represented properly, could get a huge push. I mean, he could be a monster heel if he was played right. I think they go a little bit too much on the commie gimmick with him, but it wasn't a bad segment altogether. After the match, the bromance attack Eric Young and Joseph Park. The inevitable happens. Joseph Park gets a tiny cut on his head, sees the blood, turns into Abyss. Then Eric Young calms him down at the end. I mean, Joseph Park character and gimmick has run its course for me. And unless they're going to do the straight up schizophrenia, two different personality thing, and admit that he's both Park and Abyss, I think it's run its course. It's time for us to just have the monster back, which a few months ago seemed like they were going to do, but then the monster disappeared and took the TV title with him. Now, coming off of that, we had an in-ring segment with the Aces and Eights, Bully Ray addressing the other members, Briscoe, Bischoff, and Nux, basically saying the only person that matters is Brooke Adams, or Brooke Tessmacher, sorry. Saying that he owes her all the credit, which upsets the other members. He talks down Briscoe, talks down Bischoff, gets to Nux, talks him down a bit, but Nux doesn't seem to be wanting to take it. Nux backs him out of the ring. He tells Nux to stand down. Maybe we're finally seeing the end of the Aces and Eights, which probably has run about 6 months longer than it should have, to be perfectly honest with you. There was some real moments of greatness earlier in the year with the group. At this point, and someone even mentioned it, one of them, I think it was Bischoff that mentioned it, at one point we were 10, 12 strong, now we're down to 4. I mean, at one point they were a legitimate threat, but at this point, who's threatened by Nux, Wes Briscoe, Garrett Bischoff, and Bully Ray? I mean, the threat isn't as impressive anymore to me. Now, coming off of that, we're going to go right into our question of the week for last week. The question was, how long have you been watching TNA? Simple question. Before I get into my answer, I'm going to give you guys the answers of some of our friends out there. First is from Metal Ruler 45. I've been watching TNA since 2006. Pretty good year. I think that was the year that they had the AJ Styles, Joe, Samoa Joe, and Christopher Daniels were highlighted on the show. Great year. Cacti88 says he's been watching for a year. So basically around the time Aces and Eights started till now. And last but not least, our friend Andre Corbeil. I started watching TNA on week 2 of the inaugural show from Huntsville, Alabama. It was a fluke how I found it. I was at a buddy's place having a barbecue, and we found a 1-cent introductory special deal on the pay-per-view. So while we were eating, we decided to check what TNA was, and I never looked back, brother. Along the lines of Andre, I started watching actually the very first pay-per-view. I was kind of excited. There was a lot of the talent that didn't go to WWE in the death of ECW and WCW. A lot of the talent that didn't go to WWE was on that show. You had guys like Ken Shamrock, Ron Killings, Scott Hall, I believe, was on the first show. You had the emergence of AJ Styles, Jerry Lynn was there, Low Key. I mean, there was some really great talent coming in early on. The Flying Elvises were amazing. Most notably Jimmy Yang and Sonny Siaki and Jorge Estrada, I believe, was the third guy's name. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. It's been about 10 years. But Sonny Siaki looked like a star right off the bat. You had guys like Apollo that were there. I mean, there was some real talent. The Wall, Sergeant AWOL, or whatever you want to call him, was there. They started off really well. I started watching, basically at the time, I had DirecTV, and I got, as he said, I believe they were $9.99 a show, but the first month or so, they ran specials where you could get it for $1 or cheaper. So I mean, I got them, and then I was hooked immediately. It was an alternative to what WWE was doing with some of the guys that I enjoyed watching, guys like Jeff Jarrett. I mean, that was the only place we were going to see Jarrett, and then the amazing young talent that they had there. It was a great alternative at the time, and if you look back now, yeah, there were some silly things, and they were trying to get their footing, but altogether the product was amazing. A great difference, and it's weird how it's evolved over the years, where TNA has kind of become the place where WWE cast-offs go to, where it started off with guys that were trying to make a name in the business. The first show had the America's Most Wanted, James Storm, and why can't I think of his name? It's not Brandon Walker, but you know who I'm talking about. God, why can't I think of that? Anyway, but they were on the first show. Wildcat Chris Harris, that's it. And, you could see guys like that were stars in the making. AJ Styles was a star. Low-key was a star. I mean, they had like I said, Sonny Siaki looked like a star right off the bat. So, I mean, they had something to build on. It's weird to see how the company's evolved into trying to infuse big-name WWE cast-offs, where they should have just built on the talent they had, because the talent they had was amazing. But, coming off of that, it kind of reminisces of my next question. What would be your TNA dream match? Now, there's one criteria I'm going to put on this. It has to be both competitors or 3 competitors, whatever you want to do. Every competitor in the match had to at least wrestle one time in TNA. That's it. But let us know what you think. They could be from the past, the present. If you want to see AJ Styles 2013 versus AJ Styles 2003, who's to say that's not a great match? But let us know what you think. Hit us up on our Facebook, hit us up on Twitter, put it down where? Down in the comments. Now, going back to the actual show this week, we had a Hernandez versus Gunner. Kind of set up from last week. I thought they were setting up to be a tag team match. It's kind of weird that Hernandez and Chavo are turning heel in a way without there really being a heel turn. Just being a little bit more sarcastic, and Chavo Guerrero is trying his best to channel his inner Uncle Eddie. But a decent match. Hernandez is stuck in an area where he had all the potential in the world, and he came to about this level, and he just stopped. I mean, everybody thought he would keep going and go through the roof, I, myself included, a giant of a man with some personality that can actually wrestle. He had everything you would need, but he just kind of stopped here and never, whether it be from bad booking decisions, but he's never really evolved to that next level, and it's kind of a shame. Whereas someone like Gunner, who, after what he said last week about $5 Wrestling, I'm not a personal fan of his, but you could see from the time that Gunner started in TNA till now how he's evolving, and he's making his character better and better, and he's making himself a viable talent. Obviously, Gunner picks up the win, faces go off the show. I'm guessing this is going to lead to a Gunner and Storm versus Hernandez and Chavo at Bound for Glory match for the tag titles. But Hernandez is one of the real disappointing characters. He still puts on a good match, but I want to see him put on great matches. I really do. Speaking of guys that put on great matches, we had Ego coming out versus the Main Event Mafia, Samoa Joe, Sting, and Magnus. Very good match. Ego picks up the win kind of nefariously. Of course, why wouldn't they? This is 3 of the best wrestlers in the world on one team. I think it's kind of unfair to stack the deck. Samoa Joe, Magnus, and Sting, great team. But I like the fact that Ego won. I like that they're going to move into an Ego versus the Main Event Mafia, get the Main Event Mafia away from Aces and Eights for a bit. which leads us to our final segment of the night. AJ Styles calling out Dixie Carter. AJ bringing out some of the names of the past that aren't there no more. Guys like Low Key, guys like Jay Lethal. You know, that Dixie Carter's forsaken them for bringing in talents, just like I just said, from the outside to try and pop them. Guys like, you know, Kurt Angle and such. And I thought AJ kind of took a shot when he said you brought in a guy with a big name. He was here for 3 years and he did nothing. I think AJ kind of took a shot at Rob Van Dam with that. That was a guy that I was thinking he was mentioning. I hope, I'm kind of interested to know if you guys thought the same thing as me, but that's what I took from it. Then Dixie Carter comes out and turns Vince McMahon on him. Basically, calls him the marginal one. A little bit of truth in what Dixie was saying, that AJ's character has become stale, and, you know, even with this darker turn of AJ Styles, I mean, there's a little bit of truth on both what they're saying. I'm guessing that AJ has some real frustrations, that he's the guy that they go to when their big bring-ins fail. I mean, the only guys that really worked are Christian and Kurt Angle, and Jeff Hardy, of course, if you really think about it. But other guys, I mean, Mike Knox hasn't moved the radar. DOC didn't move the radar. Even guys like the Dudleys. I mean, before Bully Ray's before Bully Ray's change in style and his weight loss and everything, he didn't really bring new viewers to the show. And I think AJ was 100% right. Of course, Dixie was right with some of her stuff about how AJ seems to coast and such. Thought it was a good segment. A weird ending with her cutting the mic and cutting off the TV. I'm kind of torn because it was decent, but we have two shows running, face of the company versus the establishment kind of angle at the same time. It's been done to death, in my opinion. I would have liked to have seen TNA stay away from this for their existence. They've done a few things. When Zbyszko was there, he abused his power as the commissioner or president or whatever he was being called. They did a few little angles like this, but to involve Dixie Carter, the owner, like this, I don't know. I think it's too much of a retread of the Vince McMahon thing, which has been retread by the McMahons themselves too many times already. But it wasn't a bad promo. I'm not saying it was bad, just too much of a same old for wrestling. And I think TNA could really be innovative. Like I said, with the first shows, the thing that reeled me in hook, line, and sinker was that they were so innovative. But, you know, it is what it is. Coming off of that, we have our weekly Hulk Hogan / Thunderlips count for the week 1. Perfect thing. We had Hogan asking Dixie if he should take care of AJ. That's the only time we've seen him. I've seen on Hogan's Twitter that next week he's going to confront Dixie himself. God, I hope he doesn't put himself in the storyline. It doesn't need him. He doesn't need to be the guy standing up for the faces. But, however, his contract is ending really soon, so maybe this is a way Hulk Hogan gets off of TNA. Who knows? Anyway, we're going to go right into our ratings for the show. As you've seen, if you've seen our show before, we were rating on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 being the best, 1 being the worst. 1's a Jesse Gadders, 2's a Garrett Bischoff, 3's a James Storm, 4's a Christopher Daniels, 5 is a Bobby Roode. I'm going a 3 all the way, James Storm. Some good stuff to take away from the show. Some lackluster stuff to take away from the show. I always think that the second show, the taped show, suffers from burnout because the fans are there already for the live show. So basically they're there for a 4-hour show plus dark matches. So the second show always suffers a little bit, in my opinion. And even some of the wrestlers that have wrestled double duty or a little bit suffer too. I mean, really the highlights of the night are ODB winning, very well deserving, even though there's no knockout division now. Ego's match with the main event Mafia was a great match. Dixie and AJ great, a good way to end the show. Like I said, a little bit too much of Vince McMahon there. Hardy vs. Mannix was surprisingly good. But there were other things that were really bad. The Aces and Eights segment ran a little too long. Hernandez and Gunner, for the reasons I mentioned, wasn't great in my opinion. So, I mean, it's right there in the middle of the road, a 3 at James Storm. Basically, that's all I have to say about it. My name is George Coles, and this has been another episode of Heel Heat.